Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and at it again here on a Wednesday here on the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us a part of your lovely evening. We're live on all media platforms known to man. Roku, iHeartRadio, and on all of your social medias. To like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button, keep you up to date on future and past episodes. We've got a special guest with us here tonight. Jeff Garcia is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about the San Antonio Spurs. A little basketball talk after we just got the championship for the Boston Celtics. Congrats to them. We talked about it last night. And we got a lot to talk about with hockey. Edmonton is not quite done yet. I'm super excited for Game 6. It'll be interesting for Friday night indeed. So let's talk about that. So the Edmonton Oilers won last night. And one of the big key takeaways is the question everybody's asking is, well, the Florida Panthers went on a 3-game run. Could this potentially be the collapse for the Florida Panthers? I'm not sure of it yet. But the thing I will tell you is Edmonton, they still got fire in their veins right now to potentially go on an amazing and crazy run. But we're not sure if that's basically going to be enough for them to get over the top. So, but I do hope that in the end, it's going to be a great series nonetheless. We at least got a series from Dallas and Boston, and the Celtics clearly were the better team. But we also know that at least in this game, Connor McDavid has been showing out. He's right now the third best player with the most points, and right now he currently is the leading holder in the most assists in the Stanley Cup final. So when you think about how the Edmonton Oilers overcome a lot of adversity, I've said it before, I don't trust their goaltending. I think Stuart Skinner, he's a good kid, but do I think he's at the elite level like a Vasilevsky or a Sergei Bobrovsky or even, at a lot of these other goaltenders? Maybe not. But he is serviceable to keeping Edmonton in games. So I'm curious as to how the tone is going to be set in Game 6. It's back in Edmonton, which we know there's going to be a lot of energy. This house is definitely going to be packed on Friday night. But I just thought it was very clear. They did not give up on a lot of their opportunities. They were winning faceoffs. They were crashing into the net multiple times. By the way, when you watch that save from Matthew Tkachuk, that was very impressive. I couldn't even believe it, to say the least. So Matthew Tkachuk comes away with a save, but it was not enough, where Connor McDavid, speedster on the ice, comes in, makes a lethal shot, and eventually wins the game. I mean, a 2-goal decider, that was what was the end of the story. And again, Florida and Paul Maurice, and I think the one thing that you saw, because I saw the clip of it where the GM for the Florida Panthers was up there, obviously upset and angry, the fact that this game literally went this way, but it's very interesting. And again, I think it's been a great series all the way through and through. I've been very happy with the results in this game. So, but I think Friday night, when you're in Edmonton in game 6, you're down 3-2. It's a go either way type game. Hopefully, I mean, if it comes down to the point where Edmonton wins game 6, I'd be worried if I'm Florida. Paul Maurice, Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, and all of these players that Florida has picked up, this would be a massive failure. You were in the Cup final last year with the run that the Vegas Golden Knights had. So I just think that with the way this is constructed, I mean, it for sure would be an absolute letdown. And I don't think, in my opinion, do I think that they are a terrible organization. I think they've picked up right where they left off. I thought that this was absolutely I think this was definitely the great result that we got. But in the end, I mean, this is what it is. This is ultimately what makes, this is what separates the boys from the men. So you don't end up making big time strides. You don't end up fixing this thing. Then that is going to be very hard for me to take you seriously. It will be. So, again, I'm curious. I don't know how Game 6 is really going to end up panning out, playing out, but it will certainly be something interesting to say. But you could tell a lot of those players right now in the locker room, they're pissed. They do not like this result. They're not a fan of this, and they hate the way that this has basically been looking like right now. And, but again, it could go either way. If Florida pans out, they get control. Hopefully this will be something that I think the Panthers can figure out. But Oiler fans are fired up. They're glad that this team won last night. And I felt like from what I've seen from the Oilers, they've overcome a lot of adversities. They really have become that team taking it over the top and have certainly end up finding ways to navigate past that Florida defense and the Florida offense at the same time. All right. So this is interesting. So I wanted to talk about this because I never got a chance to really got a chance to open up my opinion upon this conversation. So a couple days ago, Trevor Lawrence signed a massive contract worth $275 million a year, $200 million guaranteed, and he's getting paid. He's now the second highest paid quarterback next to Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. Now, with what we've seen from the results from the Jacksonville Jaguars last season, they played really good on offense. They were actually a pretty good team. It seemed like there was some promise that they were going to pick up where they left off of when they won the playoff game against the Chargers, and then they go in this season, and it looked like they were potentially going to win this division. But then everything collapsed. Injuries started to plague. Trevor Lawrence was not playing his best. And then at the same time, the defense also was getting ripped open at the same time. So what this means is for Trevor Lawrence, and like I talked about when I last talked about Jared Goff and his guaranteed contract with the Detroit Lions, he's getting paid $53 million a year. So all these quarterbacks right now, 55, 53, 52 and a half, close to right about the 48 to 45 million in a year mark. The question now bears, who and at what price will they pay these two quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa and Dak Prescott? The unfortunate part right now with the Cowboys is you franchise tag Dak twice in his career. You have no choice but to basically give him his guaranteed money. This is the crossroad that the Cowboys are in. And who knows if they're going to be able to manage this. Because I've said it before, you're never going to be able to pay all three players. I mean, I would be in shock and awe if Stephen Jones ended up pulling off something in his back pocket and he just made that happen. But I hope that the Cowboys do sign CeeDee Lamb before an injury comes away. I don't wish an injury on players. But when you give a guaranteed contract to a player right now that you know similarly from him and Justin Jefferson, they have nearly the identical stats. And they have very much have been important in the offensive department for each of their teams. So I would pay CD right now and then see and weigh out what the market will look like for Micah Parsons. But after you franchise tag Dak twice, I don't even know if you're going to be able to pay that contract. You'll be in cap hell if you try to end up signing all three of these players. You're going to have to give up some. There may not be a future for Dallas, but who knows? They might prove me wrong. But I just look at the quarterback market and it's outrageous. And like I said on the show, there are two things that we as Americans go through is inflation and recession. Inflation happens. There's new money. There's contracts. Things get expensive. Groceries gets expensive. Gasoline gets expensive. Housing markets start getting expensive. And the interest rates don't help. But that's what we go through as a nation and as Americans. We go through this kind of stuff. And then when the recession happens, which what I look at, when the longer the NFL contracts now start to kind of pan out, things get cheaper. Players you can afford in some of these areas. But I just think with what the Jacksonville Jaguars are doing, I'm surprised. They spent more money, and this is a town I visited and stayed there once. This is a town that is more invested in wrestling before I even thought that they would be invested in the Jaguars. But to be honest, good for Trevor Lawrence. But this whole narrative and what I wanted to kind of combat with is what Emmanuel Acho said, that the only reason the Jacksonville Jaguars paid Trevor Lawrence this money is because of what he did in Clemson. No, I'm not going to go with that. We knew with what he did in college. Everybody looked at him as a polarizing collegiate star, and we knew that. But I'm paying for the Trevor Lawrence right now. I'm paying for what he's currently going through. Obviously, it was a disaster the first year with Urban Meyer in his rookie year. I'm not going to condemn him for that. But I know it got better when Doug Peterson came in. But by this past season, this is where I need to amp this up. And remember, this contract doesn't hit quite yet. So they've got some time. But they did pick up Gabe Davis. They did pick up a couple of other really good pieces, but they still need to address a little bit more on the defense. So, what's funny is the stat lines. I'll give you two quarterbacks from the same organization that Trevor Lawrence aligns himself with. They either had more or just about the same touchdown passes. They've had nearly identical passing completion percentages. They've had maybe more, or if not, just about the same amount of interceptions they tossed. You know who's two quarterbacks that come to mind? Blake Bortles and Gardner Minshew. But yet we paid Trevor Lawrence $55 million a year. Now, I'm not disrespecting either of those quarterbacks. Neither am I saying that Trevor doesn't deserve this contract. But my only hope is you pay your franchise quarterback, you build around your franchise quarterback, because Jacksonville, we have not seen this pivotal needle movement since the Mark Brunell, Byron Leftwich years. And I mean, I've watched David Garrard. That was a decent team, but it was not enough to get over the hump. So can the Jaguars get over the hump? I know he's got a playoff win. And I know that he's a real good quarterback, but this generational talented quarterback, they got to be careful with that narrative. Because we're doing this with Caleb Williams right now. I would not consider Caleb Williams to be this way unless he does more than what the Chicago Bears aligned and put together. You want to talk about generational talent? Look at Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's the only quarterback that I could consider. But nobody will call him that because look at what he was in Texas Tech. This is why that I'm like, sometimes when I look at mainstream media and in a lot of these narratives that they put together, I can't really add them up. But I'm looking at what is Trevor Lawrence doing right now? What has he done at least in the play? Like, has he gotten to the playoffs? Has he won a division title? Has he won a playoff game? That's the Trevor Lawrence I'm paying for. I'm not paying for him for what he did in college. Okay, college is college. It's in the past. I'm paying for him right now. So hopefully the Jaguars can figure this out and they'll be a much better team because I thought it was embarrassing by the time that the Houston Texans won that division. All right, good stuff. Jeff Garcia around the corner. Got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about the Spurs, talk about Wemby. I'm excited for what the future is going to build around with the Spurs. But there's a lot of talks. NBA draft, offseason. Can't wait to dig into that. We'll take a quick break up on it, but around the corner, Jeff Garcia is going to be joining us here on the show. All right, folks. Well, like I said, just because the NBA season, we're already going into the offseason as it is right now, doesn't mean that we do not have the lines, the sports betting lines for you guys for Stanley Cup Finals, for Major League Baseball action. And we've also got soccer around the corner as well. It's a big, big tournament matchup as well. Don't miss out on that. BetUS has you covered on it because BetUS, they've got the best sporting books that they have been doing for over 30 years. Best bet lines from straight to parlay leg bets. Also some casino play for you guys to check out as well for entertainment purposes. Any of you that would like to check out what BetUS has to offer for you, go online to betus.com. Gambling problem? Call your number in your state immediately. Do not gamble rationally. Do not gamble irrationally. Smart gambling. Gamble responsibly. But check out BetUS for yourself for all the best sports books lines that BetUS has for you to offer. BetUS, where the game begins.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
All right, so this NBA season, it really has been something else. And again, congratulations to the Boston Celtics for winning the championship. But right now, we are noticing at least a trend of draft and development. And again, I thought this year, we knew with what we got with Victor Wembanyama. And I think the kid is absolutely tremendous. I think if you add up a few pounds for him, especially with the way that the NBA is trending with physical play, and at the same time, a lot of the bigs are getting involved. It's old school basketball coming back into the mix, and a lot more of it from here. But to join us and talking more about that with the San Antonio Spurs and what the outlook we're going to get from the organization, Jeff Garcia joining us. So what I've got like in the last few years is international stars right now. There is 5 of them, and there still are going to potentially be more of them along the horizon. But I can make the argument. I think Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, who we just got, in the final, Victor Wembanyama, because I think the kid with his length and his size and the way he plays is unbelievable. Then you've got Giannis, and then I'd say you probably could make a case for Joel Embiid and for a couple of others. Sure. When you look at Victor Wembanyama, and for a team that is trending in a different direction where we're trying to draft, we're trying to develop, but we also need some star power. I mean, how did you kind of outlook this? Because I just think Victor Wembanyama, with what I see him play, with the length he is, this kid's got an absolute bright future among the horizon for him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, bright is just an understatement. I mean, it's just the sky's the limit. And here's the thing: to close out last season, he openly admitted that he's not even scratching the surface of his skill set that he's bringing to the NBA. So, yeah, with that being said, the Spurs, they do have their franchise piece. Yay, good to go. But now we got to build around him, and that's the next phase that this team is on. You look at last season. I chalked up last season as to more of a who is going to stick around from that roster moving forward kind of season. The usual suspects, your Devin Vassell's, Jeremy Sohan's. Sure, maybe they'll go move forward with them, but everybody else is expendable, in my opinion. I think if they're going to want to speed up this rebuild, if they want to, then they may have to cut ties with some players on the current roster. But here's the thing. From players to Jeremy Sohan, who openly said during an interview with a Spanish outlet this offseason that they're going to take their time, to GM Brian Wright saying they're not going to skip steps, to Popovich, to Buford, the list goes on and on. They're going to be looking at this rebuild as a slow cook. Mm-hmm. Wemby's on board, but how much longer could he take knowing that, we got year or two as a rebuild, and then when they finally get going, he's up for a contract extension. So you gotta play both sides. The good news is that the Spurs, if they want to, they can speed this up with the treasure trove of assets they have. I mean, it is just ridiculous. I mean, they might be running the draft for the next few years at this point. Them in OKC, first rounders, second rounders, unprotected picks, the financial cap space they have, and yes, players on the current roster that are flippable with very good contracts from Keldon Johnson to Jeremy Sohan. The list goes on and on. But yeah, with 4 and 8 picks coming up next week, it's going to be interesting to see. But if you read the tea leaves from who or what the type of player the Spurs are working out, they're looking at guards. Thank goodness, because that is the biggest need this team has right now is just guard play. No knock on Trey Jones. I'm a big fan of Trey Jones. I think the kid is phenomenal. But they need more help there. They need consistent shooting. They need a point guard. They need veteran presence. In essence, their rebuild is still going on, and it's going to be a while before they get out.
So I'm glad you kind of hit the nail on the head on this one, because that was going to be the next thing transitioning to, is because there have been a lot of talks about, potential guards, guys that could potentially be either via, free agent market, or maybe potentially, a trade is in place. I've heard a lot of names being thrown out there, from Trae Young to multiple others. Is there a name that right now is getting thrown out there from the Spurs that you're hearing right now that could potentially be something happening that could come into San Antonio and really help in the offensive department?
Yeah, it would. From, again, reading the reports out there, it looks like things have cooled off with the Trae Young aspect. It looks like that's kind of been pumped the brakes a bit. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. A name that I'm still kind of scratching my head and saying, okay, I wouldn't be too surprised if they do this move, is bringing back DeJounte Murray. I could definitely see the Spurs doing that. But it looks like all signs are pointing to right now they're going to go looking at the guard position to fill at the draft. You hear names like Darius Garland pop up, being connected to San Antonio, but the biggest thread is just the draft, which if you're a Spurs fan, you should know this should not come to surprise you at all. That's what the Spurs have done. That's been their blueprint. You look at the Tim Duncan era. It was built around Timmy. We had an agent, David Robinson. He was already exiting out. So let's start building around him. And then they did it with Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. Sound familiar? They got themselves a Wemby. Now they're looking for a guard. It looks like they're doing that process all over again. You look at all the mock drafts. It's all over the map right now. I'm pretty sure you're aware about this. You could probably look right now, and it's changed just in the last 2 hours. Who's going to go number 1? Who's going to go number 10 and 8 and 4 and whatnot? But it looks like they're high on Stephon Castle. It looks like you know what? I personally wouldn't do it, but Topic could be still there on the board if the Spurs want to take him. Would I be surprised? Pop is a big European player fan, and the Spurs have been looking for a big guard. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what they're trying to get at. You look at the shocking pick they had years ago with Josh Primo. Big guard taken early. Fortunately, things didn't work out. he's no longer with the team. You look at last season, what did they try to do? Go with a big point guard, Jeremy Sohan. Didn't work out. They moved on. What did they do after that? Go with another big point guard, Malachi Branham. Didn't work out, moved on. You see the pattern here? They want a big point guard at their Topic 6'6". Perhaps the biggest ceiling, but that knee thing, man, that worries me a lot. So I don't know if the Spurs would do that. I did speak with Topic, though. He did tell me that the Spurs doctors have spoken to his doctors about his health. So if you want to take that, there's that. But yeah, point guard is need right now. I wouldn't even be upset if they were just rent a Chris Paul for a year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be mad about that. You go that route, fine, be it. But will Chris Paul want to come and waste a year when he could chase a ring? So he's already getting up there. So as you can tell, that position is in flux right now. What can they do? What should they do? So with all the money they got and all the draft capital they got, if it's up to me, if I was in that GM room right now, I would say, okay, I'm calling all these other teams and say, what do you want for an established point guard right now? Because I personally don't want, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't want the Spurs trying to work their magic in this draft. I'd rather work their magic on next draft and next year's free agency crop. I say, hold the fort, just pick number 4 and 8, move on. And then we'll worry about that bridge in 2025 when we get there. But if they want to speed this up, they can do it. And that's what's frustrating with a lot of Spurs fans is that they see it. They see what they have, the cap space, the picks, the players, Wemby. Let's get this going. The Spurs have not been in the playoffs in 6 years already? Already 6 years. They have not been there. And the last time they were close to that was the play-in tournament when it was just in its inception. So yeah, they got to get this thing going. Wemby does repeat a lot that he wants to start winning. So I don't know if that'll light a fire on the team, and I'm pretty sure it will. With Wemby wants, Wemby will get. But it looks like he's on board with the slow burn. Spurs fans right now, they'll probably laugh at you and probably say, no, we don't want this. We want to win now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really tough because at the same time, I mean, and I spoke to a Lakers writer not too long ago on my show when I talked about, because, I mean, you look at a big brand like the Lakers, like the Yankees, and like many, many big brands, even the Dallas Cowboys. You mention rebuild as a term in them, people freak out. They don't like it. And I'm like, well, it's more of a retool than anything else because they want to win. But when you look at a lot of other marketed teams, like a San Antonio, like an OKC, like a Pacers, they aren't afraid of at least of the slow build. Mm-hmm. But this is where it's also a topic to talk about as well, because we've just seen so many years of Greg Popovich be that defensive-minded coach, be that guy who basically loves having veterans up in the building who obviously execute a lot of different roles. These are guys that basically attack the perimeter. These are guys that also defend, even when you're looking at right now with it being a shooting spree, you defend at the wing, and you basically get much needed rebounds and blocks. But when you start thinking about this development, and I know it might be a little bit too early, or maybe it might be about that time, but I think of Greg Popovich's, like his timeline right now. And I mean, I know from the fan base's standpoint to the organization standpoint, I mean, how do they kind of, play this out with Pop? Is there at some point that if this thing don't end up working out like it should, could there be something else up in place at some point down the stretch of the road?
I hope so, because you talk about a rebuild. That is perhaps the bigger piece of the rebuild is who will take over once Pop hangs it up. There's no signs of him slowing down. He pretty much said at the end of last season that he'll be back. So it'll be Popovich all over again. But there has to be a point. They have to be getting ready for that transition. He is the last remnant of the Spurs golden era with the big three. That's it. Once he's gone, it's almost like you're starting all over again, because you look at the Spurs history under Popovich's time at the helm. Was he perhaps the biggest draw to come to San Antonio? Tim Duncan was not a recruiter. He was not a guy to go out there and, hey, Kevin Garnett, come join me. He wasn't like that. But what do you hear? A lot of players say, oh, to play with Pop. Okay, fine. Maybe they just speaking it because they never did come to San Antonio, despite saying they would love to play for him. Mm-hmm. But Wemby's going to have to take that mantle, because if once Pop leaves, then it's going to be Wemby, and who wants to play with Wemby? But I don't think that'll happen until the Spurs start winning and Wemby gets even better what he's in. And then you'll probably see the free agents coming. But, I don't mean to get off track here, but going back to Popovich, yeah. And I think that's something in the back of the franchise's mind is who's going to take over. We thought it'd be Budenholzer. He's gone. We thought it'd be a Torre Messina. He's back in Europe. We thought it'd be Becky Hammond. She went to the WNBA. That'd be, the coach in Utah. Excuse me, I forgot. Will Hardy. He's, long gone. So that's a lot of talent that's gone out the door because Pop is there. Can you imagine one of those any of those coaches already coming along now and growing with Wemby, developing with him? So oof, that is a very, very good question. I'm glad you brought that up because it makes me think like, yeah, you can get all the players together to build around Wemby, but who's going to guide them? Pop's been doing a magnificent job. You can get Wemby and All-Star X and draft this sleeper and get this guy, and they come out to be a good team. And what if they're going through the rebuild and they're coming out of it and they're ready out of it? And then Pop says, that's it, I'm done. I'm 79 years old, 80 years old. I can't do this anymore. Then it's like, God, do you bring in a new coaching staff, a new assistant coaching staff, a new system? So, yeah, that's something the Spurs got to think about. Personally, if it was to me, I think maybe Pop should have hung it up a few years ago to let that transition continue. No knock on him. Not saying they want him out at all. I'm just thinking if you're turning the page from the Big Three era into the Wemby era, let's turn the page, everything. Let's start from fresh and move forward.
And I'm with you on that because initially, like what I thought of was I thought we were going to get the first female head coach with Becky Hammond because I love her in Las Vegas. I think she's very much established a very strong culture, and that's why the women play the way they do. And I've talked about it with, and we'll talk about this down the stretch, but I just think when you look at this with the golden age right now in the WNBA and what they're doing right now, I just think it's been great for women in sports, and that's where I thought this was what it was transitioning to. But I'm with you on that. I feel like too, in my outlook, if I'm translating some W's, if I'm very much organically building this thing to its best potentials and they're winning games, I would say this would be a great job to take rather than versus the Lakers, where I'm like, I've got no future. And I'm like, I'm dealing with, AD and LeBron. And I'm like, I think this would be much more of a more patient, comfortable, but at the same time, you're building this thing to reach its full potential. A question that was brought up to share with you is the idea of trading for a defensive playmaker like potentially a Herb Jones or a Malcolm Brogdon. What are you hearing from there?
Nothing really. They've been quiet with those two names, but those are two names that a lot of Spurs fans do bring up, especially Brogdon. Again, veteran defender. And can play some offense. A good, solid two-way guy. Fits seamlessly into San Antonio, I think, in my opinion, and will just bring a steady force. Because you saw this last year several times. There were times, look, to the Spurs' credit, they closed out the season pretty well. I mean, they were really, really strong. I spoke to Trey Jones at the end of the season, and he told me that he felt that the team gave the fans a glimpse of what could have been. And if that's what a glimpse, and like, whoa, wow, if things had come together sooner, maybe this team doesn't win just 22 wins on the season. But you saw late in the game sometimes the Spurs giving some of the heavy hitters in the NBA all their major run. I mean, I think they took to New York overtime. They gave Philadelphia fits. They gave double overtime games against some of the best teams in the NBA. But they fell apart at the end because of the youth and the inexperience. And sure, you could say, well, okay, lesson learned. You took your lumps. You carry that with you moving forward. But if you had a steady force, a veteran presence, maybe that doesn't happen. And so it's clear that this team also needs a veteran presence. I don't care if it's from the point guard spot, forward spot. You need somebody that's vocal, that's going to show these guys, like a Chris Paul, just for an example. That's going to get in these guys' faces. But a Brogdon would be a great, great, great addition to San Antonio if the Spurs definitely. Hey, look, that's the thing, too. They can afford these guys. They can afford these free agents. Name your price free agent. We're like San Antonio is like what the number one, if not number two,
Yeah.
team with way under just ridiculously under the salary cap. So yeah, I mean, again, maybe that's why I shouldn't be in the GM room, because I'd be okay. Let's just trade everybody. Let's bring in all this in, because I want to start getting this team going. I want Wemby to get going. I want him to sniff a play-in spot, get in the play-in spot, maybe eke in as a 7th and 8th seed to see what it takes sooner than later.
I'm glad that you brought it up because, to me, in my show, I've had a couple people who have covered a lot of the low market, mid market teams, and we've explained about that. And I'd like your opinion on this. I just think right now, with the trend that we're seeing in the NBA, I think Adam Silver is really trying to make this a draft and develop type league. Now, I know in the last, 10, 15 years, we've had
the G League Ignite. I mean, there's your answer right there. The Ignite team. That's what it's about.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, so when you think of because we've had the super teams for the last few years, but I think right now with what we're seeing, even if you had I just watched Phoenix get absolutely just mopped.
Oof.
And it's like, it don't even matter at this point.
Yeah.
You're trying to draft and develop your next big thing. And I mean, once they got, the market at least for San Antonio, I'll be honest, and you probably might have a different opinion of it, but I think, thank God they got Wemby, because at least it really helps their market to where players would like to come play because they've got Wemby and because they've got a future that's bright enough for them to potentially be a great Western Conference team. But when I look at what what college hoops gave us from the March Madness tournament, I mean, this was kind of, not saying a full disappointment, but I didn't get enough from it this year. I felt very different of it because, I got Zach Edey. I got a couple of other really good players. Are we just I'm hoping that we really fully develop our domestic stars, because I just feel like I don't hear about these guys until their 4th, 5th year in the league.
Yeah.
So is there kind of something you've seen in the trend in the last 5 years?
Yeah.
But you're hoping that the NBA and college hoops, I know they have a very good, strong relationship, but are there some adjustments that can maybe make this better and reach the prime of their success?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the one and done. I think there's something to be said about kids getting at minimum, in my opinion, 3 seasons in college before making the leap to the NBA. And you're seeing a lot of teams, a lot of players come out one and done, enter draft, one and done, enter draft. Then it's from that point, it's the development, because they got no choice, basically. NBA teams got no choice if you're drafting an 18-year-old, unless your name's not Wemby. But outside of that, if you're an 18-year-old, 19-year-old coming out of college, you're going to still need more time to develop. So I think, the one and done thing, I've never been a fan about. You're talking about trends as well. And I like what you said earlier before you brought me on. The trend is now going big now. I mean, the Tim Duncan era was all about the bigs, and you're seeing that shift again. Right now, it's still kind of dominant of the guards, but you're seeing that shift. You got Edey coming in, you got Klingon coming in, and of course now you got Wemby in the NBA. You're just seeing a lot more bigs in there, and they're getting skilled, and but they take time. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. Sure, I get the whole point of draft them early, get them in the NBA, then you develop them, but you're going to hurt the product on the court for fans when they see, stupid plays, rookie mistakes. We just look at San Antonio backyard right now. For the last 3 seasons, this has been a common thread at every post-conference game, especially in a loss. We're young, we're developing. You fast forward the next losing streak, we're young, we're developing. That's all you hear. So, you look at guys that are coming out. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Dalton Connect. He's a 4-year kid. I think he's gonna, or Klingon, 3 years. A big, strong guy, ready NBA made, solid, has at least a good foundation to whatever team he goes to next week. So. Yeah, and I think it's impacting the American players. This, your listeners know this. You look at European players, they're professionals early.
Yeah.
Like 13, 14 years old. And then they come in to the NBA with a great foundation, playing over their heads, maybe on purpose, just to get them ready for, the pro ranks in the NBA. So
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
when
there you
when
go.
I watch Luka dominate at 15 years old against guys that are in like their late
Yeah.
30s, early 40s, I'm like,
Hmm.
good Lord, like they really are callousing
Yeah.
that potential for him that when he comes into the league, he's going to be the next big thing. But I
Sure.
mean, with what I saw in the finals, I mean, I was like, I know he's a great shooter and I know he's a guy that's very offensively dominant, but I got to add some defense there.
Hmm.
I got to get this guy on a dietary program that's going to help to get him in the best, build the consistency.
Yeah.
So one thing I do want to revert back to that I mentioned was, so for someone who's covered, at least a basketball team in general,
Hmm.
covering the sport, this Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark thing, I got to be honest with you, with this mainstream media has been so blown out of
Yeah. I
proportion.
agree with you.
And you've
Yeah.
seen it. I've seen it. I
Yeah.
mean, like, look, I grew up watching MJ. I grew up watching Kobe. I grew up
Hmm.
watching these guys, and where
Yep.
there was the hero, there was the villain, there was all this. I don't mind that. But I'm like, I just feel like mainstream media doesn't know how to really deal with this.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a struggle. When you've seen this narrative, how would you best describe it? Because I feel like right now, Caitlin Clark, yes, she's very polarizing.
Hmm.
She's kind of building into becoming potentially the Steph Curry of the WNBA.
Yeah.
But we know a lot of WNBA players are reminding her, hey, you ain't there yet. We're
Yeah.
building you up, but you are not there at the top tier because again, I didn't care if she didn't make the Olympic team.
Yeah.
I felt like maybe this was not the year, but it's not going to say she'll never make it.
Sure.
And then when Angel Reese comes out, I'm just like, okay, go ahead, be the villain, but I mean, I've gotten a lot of really good rookies. I mean, the one rookie that just went down with an ACL, I felt bad for her, with the
Brink.
Sparks. Yeah, with
Brink,
Cameron.
yeah.
Oh, Cameron Brink is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then I watched Camila Cardoso. I mean, so when you think of this narrative, in your opinion, when you best describe it, I mean, I just think mainstream media just does not know
No.
how to
Yeah.
put the narrative together when they're putting this. It's just they don't know how to handle it.
No, I'm right there with you. I think it's been blown out of proportion. It's just part of the game. You saw this, your audience saw this during the NBA Finals. You had PJ Washington literally throw down Porzingis to the floor, grab him by the shoulder, and just toss him down.
Yep.
So it just happens in games. I mean, wasn't there just recently a brawl in baseball, like a massive brawl?
Yep.
Things like this just happen, and I think the best way mainstream sports should have handled it, and literally, I think it would have been to their credit, is this just another day in the office. Like, no joke. If they just handled it like that, it wouldn't have had become what it is now.
Right.
It just would have been part of the sports scene, and that's it. I mean, look, PJ Washington throws Porzingis on the court. That wasn't blown out. They're not still talking about it. You fast forward to today, they're still talking about the whole dust up that Clark got into recently. So I might just leave it alone. Sure, highlight it. I get it. Get your clicks, get your views. Okay, but you got to move on eventually and just push forward. And I actually think the women of the sport probably would have appreciated it more if mainstream sports media treated it just like another day at the office. I really believe that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's just like, I mean, it's no different. I mean, the fact that like, look, you got a good defense on me, or you're there to kind of rough up. Okay, we'll play that basketball. But I just love the fact that Caitlin Clark is handling it the best way possible. Like she's saying all the right things. I mean, she grew up in a household with two brothers, so she's aware of this. She's built for this. But like I said, I just think that the build, it's cooking, it's getting better. But this is the golden age of the WNBA because I mean, like I said, as one who's come from a Spurs organization with Becky Hammon, she knows how to set the tone with her ladies. She knows how to set the tone in the culture in Vegas. I mean, like it's no different. That's why I'm like, it's interesting to say at the least. But finally, before letting you go,
yes, sir.
I think, I mean, I just felt like with what we got in the finals is we had a team that was ready to win, that was built to win. I looked at from the finals, like from previously against the Golden State Warriors, I felt like when Robert Williams went down, they did not have a big that was there to give them the rebounds and the blocks and stops. And I felt like that was where they really got exposed. This year, I had Porzingis, I had Al Horford, who gave me veteran presence,
Oh, yes.
and another big that really happened. And then at the same time, I mean, I just drove by down the street, Denver's own Derek White, who was very much an X factor.
Oh, yeah.
So I just feel like with the finals, I'm glad that Dallas got a game, because we wouldn't have gone through all that throughout the playoffs if we didn't get just one game in the final there that would have made a series. So when you look at this, the Eastern Conference, I feel like there's 3 to 4 teams that are building up to where the conference will be different. But the Western Conference, as someone covers it, I mean, this is kind of a Norm Another Day in the Office. Offensive, physical, and I think at the same time, Minnesota's building something special. Many other teams are building up. I feel like Denver is going to be a problem for the next 5 years. So when you look at the build between the Western and the Eastern Conference teams, I mean, I just felt like Boston was ultimately the best team this year. So how would teams basically answer for next season after we just saw what Boston did this year?
Well, I mean, you saw, if you just take in the Boston blueprint, then you would hope to duplicate that. But still, there's still that magic in Boston right now. And I think the magic began with Missoula. I really believe that. Missoula was the key. And I'm sure Tatum has to do this thing, Porzingis, Brown, all those players. But Missoula really kept it. So you got to have good young head coaching on that sideline. And he did a bang-up job. Look, what Boston had this past season, wasn't overnight. They had many failures on the way to reaching the pinnacle of the NBA. So let's keep that in mind. I mean, they lost to the Warriors, and I mean, that was a series they should have won, but they lost. So, and then of course the Philadelphia series, a year in between, they lost that too. So at the same time, you got to keep that in mind, that it didn't happen overnight. It keeps cooking, but you're talking about up and coming teams. I mean, in the West especially. I mean, I think we're sleeping on Houston a bit. Houston with Ime Udoka there, they have another high draft pick this year. Sengun had a coming out party. Their young players are coming together. They're starting to buy into defense. They were knocking on the play indoor before they got shut. So that Houston's another team to keep an eye on. You got John Morant coming back from Memphis. The Spurs still not there yet. Sure. I mean, the bar set low, 22 wins. They win 29 next year. Woohoo! Successful season. They up the ante there. But you got to look at that, and if you're a West team, man, it's just a gauntlet. I mean, Boston maybe give them the Indiana series that really gave them fits. I think Indiana took them to 6 or 7.
Yeah, they took them to about 6-7. Yeah, and the transition of that team. Oh man, I'm like, if they could just get. And just earlier, I just got the report that Pascal Siakam is ready to sign a 4-year, $189.5 million contract extension. So I'm like, damn, a young team, and you got a veteran right there. I think if you add in one more piece, Pacers are going to be a team that's going to be a problem there.
Yeah, Indiana's going to be a problem too. Philadelphia, as long as Embiid's there, they're going to be a problem in the regular season. We'll see how they do in the postseason.
Yes.
But in the regular season, they're a problem. Orlando is another up-and-coming team.
Yes.
You're forgetting about Orlando. So you're starting to see the East perhaps get a little bit stacked to maybe challenge Boston and their thing. But, I mean, you look at the metrics. I mean, if you just take away the eye test, just look at the numbers. I mean, Boston was by far the best team, just statistic-wise. I mean, offensive and defensively, they were one of the best in the league. But yeah, I know that Dallas got one game, but I really wanted a 6 or 7 game series. I wanted a little bit more, a little thrilling. But hey, if you're Dallas, sure, it sucks to be, the loser in the series, but I really believe Luka got a big lesson. Big lesson how to conduct himself as a superstar. Sure, all players complain. Tim Duncan was notorious for it, but then there's Luka. There's difference between kicking a ball and then putting the ball in the cannon and firing it off of there 100 miles an hour. That's Luka. So I think he learned a lot. Maybe he'll keep his body in shape, because they look just ragged and tired at the end. They just like they had no life left. And you got to keep this in mind. Dallas, I think Dallas was a 6th seed. Wasn't it? Dallas was a 6th
They were a
seed.
5th, 6th seed. Yep.
5th, 6th. Yeah. So they were not a top seed in the West.
Right.
But nevertheless, yeah, I mean, Boston, as of now, I don't think anybody should be surprised if they repeat. It will be their first back-to-back champion in quite some time. But yeah, hats off to Boston. They handled business. The banner 18 is now hanging in the Garden. And now, all teams are going to have the target on their back. Just like Wemby's going to have a target on his back next season. I really believe Wemby's going to have a big target on his back next year. Be okay, kid. Give you a season. Now let's see what you can do, because as of now, it's just Wemby and that's it. You shut him down, maybe you get Spurs down. But I hope the Spurs will fix the roster, bring in some more firepower, all-star talent, and get out of the rebuild sooner than later.
See, this is why that I'm like, such good stuff, man. This is why that, like, covering Spurs, and all the rest of it, seeing what's happening from inside out. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm excited. I'm excited for next week and what things are going to look like for the NBA draft. Yeah. I hope the best successes for all players, domestic and international. I mean, but this is what's making what the product should be. And I think if they're trending in the right direction, I think there's a little bit of some fixes, because we know the NIL and all that is all in play, but at least to make it bigger, better, because again, I'm watching the NFL and these are guys that are ready to play right now.
Sure.
These are guys that have been groomed up, ready for it, 4 or 5 years in college. And I think that's where the NIL really has came into play. But hopefully, I know, and I'm saying this, I'm hoping that the NBA, they're ready to kind of pass that baton now to where it's like, this is what it is. Are we ready for that change? Are we ready to flip the script now to where these are young kids and the NBA is going to look completely different? And again,
absolutely.
When I watch the Spurs, I watch OKC, I watch the Pacers and the Magic, I want to get more of that. And I want to get guys, and even with mixtures of veterans, because I just think the veteran thing now with LeBron and all the rest of them, it's just, we're changing the page now. So it's interesting to kind of see that.
And Phoenix proved that sometimes firepower and star power doesn't work.
Exactly. Good stuff, Jeff. Appreciate you coming up onto the show, man. And like I said, I'll see what next week kind of really looks out for a lot of these organizations, but hopefully, seeing from the offseason, hopefully the Spurs can get a good mixture of veteran and build a lot of their young core, and see what Wemby's got here up in year 2, man. Appreciate you. Take care of yourself. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Yes, sir. Be safe, and thank you for the invite. You got a good show. Keep it up. And very entertaining. So congratulations on all your success you've had.
Absolutely. I'm trying to get up there with the top dogs, man. When I look at Coward and a lot of them, I'm trying to get up there with these guys.
Just give it time. You'll be there. But I appreciate you, and always, and talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon, man. Yeah, it's and the thing is, what I look at with the NBA, because there's a lot of young stars, there's a lot of international stars. They're like, a lot of the international guys, they're built differently than some of the domestic stars. But it'll be interesting to see, for many teams that are building up organically. I mean, again, the Hawks have the number 1 pick. I had Bryce Lewis on not too long ago, and then there's some interesting pieces they could look at there. But there are a bunch of them that I'm hoping, because again, with Victor Wembanyama is unbelievable. And I think we kind of knew that he was going to be the rookie of the year. He was going to be a guy that was going to move the needle for the Spurs, but you got to get veterans. I liked what he said about Chris Paul. I felt like that if you get somebody like that, and I know Paul wants to be able to win a championship, but I think if you get somebody to an experienced caliber like that, who's vocal, who could build these young guys and bring in a couple mixtures, maybe Malcolm Brogdon would be great. But I think this next season is going to be really, really interesting. It may not be a most dominant draft like what we're getting in the NFL this year, but it should be a pretty interesting season nonetheless next year, and especially with what we got from the Boston Celtics. Quick break. We're going to have a couple more to kind of talk about here up and on the show.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Yeah, so one thing that I definitely wanted to talk about before we end up ending the show here on a great note. Shout out to Jeff Garcia. Great stuff for the San Antonio Spurs. So the Trevor Lawrence contract thing, and I know I spoke about it briefly before bringing on our guest, but those are two quarterbacks that I'm looking at right now with this market is Dak and Tua. The difference of it is because Dak franchise tagged twice. You got to give him a guaranteed contract at the end of the day, whether Dallas does pay it or he signs on with a different organization. But it's going to be really, really hard with Dak, considering the fact that Dak was a 4th-round quarterback and Tua was a 1st-round. I think initially with what the Dolphins are maybe potentially doing, and again, I'm not opposed if Miami signs Tua. I'm not opposed to that. I just think with what I've seen, I saw the pre-Mike McDaniel Tua, and then I've got the Tua now with Mike McDaniel. And it's hard to add it up because Tua had been benched 5 times under Brian Flores. And Brian Flores didn't want Tua initially at the time, which was what was very, I would consider not luck, but it was just an opportunity that was missed. Once they passed on Justin Herbert and then he goes to pick number 6 to the Chargers, then that's where a lot of things really started to kind of pan out. Now, I know Justin Herbert right now with what he's getting with Jim Harbaugh as a veteran coach, you're going to see this team ultimately make the playoffs at some point, whether it is this year, next year, whatever. They got a bright future with this. And eventually, Justin Herbert, for most people, you will get the playoff wins. You will. Many people, I know there's half of them that are patient, there's half of them that are impatient. But I just feel like sometimes it just depends on your ownership and your product. Because if your ownership, if it does not end up translating to where it does, like I look at Carolina, I look at multiple other organizations who feel like this. But Carolina, they are giving at least a fair chance. I just feel like Dave Tepper has to sit down, let the front offices do the work. Because Bryce Young is not a terrible quarterback. I just felt like because the cards that were dealt and the way that the ownership has really been kind of panning out, it just really has not looked good. But to the Tua, contract negotiating, I just feel like if you give this puppy 5-6 weeks, and let's say Tua is dominant, then maybe you do come into a situation where you've already paid Tyreek, you've already paid Jalen Waddle, you've already paid a couple of players, but you're trying to figure out your quarterback situation because, look, the months of September, October, mid-November, it's fun football. You are figuring out with what you've got on your roster, and you're also answering your questions as far as contract negotiations. But by late November, December, January, right to February, that is gridiron football. That is where you really have to understand what your identity is, figure this out, and you've got to be on a hot streak. You got to be very consistent offensively, defensively. So that's what's going to be the difference. So again, with Tua, we just saw this where they had an opportunity to take the division, but Buffalo was the stronger team. They were built for December, January. Philadelphia is built for December, January. There are teams that are built for the December, January cold months. But again, no disrespect to the Miami Dolphins, but I felt like because of what we got from Tua in the playoffs against the Kansas City Chiefs, he's clearly not built for the cold, neither against the Buffalo Bills and a bunch of cold teams. And I feel like Miami is that summer vacation, girlfriend that you basically have where you're out on the beach. It's fun. You're driving fast, like you're driving in 75 in a Lambo or whatever in beautiful beach weather. And then by the time you're in the cold, that Lambo is not reliable. Nobody's wearing bikinis in 40, 35 degree weather, unless you live in Alaska, you're Eskimoan or whatever. And you're not going to tell this girl that you're moving to a Montana or an Idaho or even where I live in Denver, Colorado in the cold where you got the snow. She's going to tell you to kick rocks. She loves beach weather all day. So that's where I feel like Miami is just seasonal. But again, with the contract situation with Tua, you just have to be clear about it. Are you okay that if you gave Tua a contract, are you okay that if the fact is it's going to work one of two routes, either Tua will be a much bigger, better quarterback than what we got initially in the last few years, or this is who Tua is. Tua doesn't like to make mistakes. Tua is also a kind that we know hard amount of success as a left-hander. We've never seen many left-handers since Ken Stabler, Boomer Esiason, Mark Brunell, Michael Vick. Multiple left-handed quarterbacks have a lot of success. It's majority righties. So could he be the best version of himself? Or is this kind of the ceiling with where Tua is? And then you have to ask yourself, is that going to be enough to not only make the playoffs, but win playoff series? Win playoff games. Because if not, where do you draw the line? How do you really explain this? Because we've seen this with Kansas City. We've seen this with multiple other teams that have moved on from those quarterbacks, and they got a quarterback that either is generational talent or is good enough that helped to give them over the hump and win playoff games and eventually win a Super Bowl. So you got to be honest with yourself if you're Miami. But I'm not opposed to them signing Tua. I'm not. You signed Tua, good, great. You got your quarterback. You got your franchise quarterback. I'm not opposed to that. But also, I'm not closing the door on another possibility if that is the case. It's however, it's however Chris Grier approaches this as the GM. Then when you look at Dak has won many games against sub 500 teams. He's an unbelievable quarterback against sub 500 teams, but when he plays 500 and above teams, not the same quarterback. Not winning you playoff games. Sure, the IQ, the podium, and the rest of it, it's cute, it's great and all. He says all the right things, but even he has a ceiling. Where do you go from here with Dak? And I just think with the way Dallas has kind of managed a lot of this stuff, this is why I've always preached for, they need outside eyes. They need guys that are looking at what is the market right now. Where's a lot of the generational talent right now? Are there guys that we need to address defensively? I'm glad they picked up offensive line, because if this is kind of where you're drawing the line with Dak, beef up your offensive line. Get a number 2 receiver. Help out your defense after you got gutted this past season, but maybe there's still a couple of really good defensive players that'll play well. But I don't know. I just hope that they sign CeeDee Lamb quickly before an injury occurs, because they are a CeeDee Lamb injury away from this thing just really looking bad. And if you don't have a number 2 receiver to, at the very least, make this make sense, it makes it a lot harder on you. I don't know what you do from here, how this really translates, but hopefully they should, and hopefully they will be able to figure this out. All right, guys, that's going to do it here for me here on the show. Shout out to Jeff Garcia joining us on the show with us, talking Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs and basketball. Absolutely loved everything that he provides. Man, great shows these last couple of weeks. Been very happy with a lot of these interviews that we've had. No show tomorrow, but there will be one on Friday. So we've got a couple of really good guests that are going to be coming on with us here up on Friday. So we have more here up on the show. Show sponsored by BetUS. Join BetUS today. $50 or more in your deposit. 200% bonuses with 30 risk-free bets. And also on SeatGeek, $20 off when you use promo code SNAKESPORTS for your first purchase of your first ticket, wherever it may be, sporting event, concert with your favorite artist, or wherever. Get the best seat at the most affordable price when using SeatGeek.com, and also on your mobile device. You're going to go play in the App Store. Thanks to Snake Silva signing off here for you guys, and we'll see you Friday here on the next edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. See you later, guys.